Hello and welcome to session 3 of the History of Healing. We're diving today into Paleolithic life, or the Stone Age life of antiquity and ancient civilizations of Egypt and Mesopotamia. So this marks the beginning of our tour through the history of medicine. We've completed our introductory material and we're starting into the history of medicine now and the history of healing through the world. And what we start with today is what little is known of the earliest humans during the Stone Age, and then traveling through two of the world's oldest civilizations in Mesopotamia and Egypt. And for this session, we are very greatly dependent on the archaeological record and what's preserved in artifacts and human skeletons. And that really tells us a fragmented story of how humans viewed health and disease and healing in the Stone Age. And then with the advent of ancient civilization, humans developed the first writing, and that's when we started to get our first written record of what was going on in ideas of healing and medicine. In ancient Egypt, they were also then using mummification as a body preservation technique, and so we get a different record from the archaeological evidence from ancient Egypt than we would from other civilizations who don't use that practice. And the written record and the different types of preservation of bodies gives us a bit more information about the early systems of medicine. These two civilizations are rivaled in age by the civilizations of ancient China and India, and we'll study those later this semester. But whilst China and India developed really comprehensive healing systems that have persisted in use to the present day, which allows us to know more about the histories of these medicines, ancient Egypt and Mesopotamian medicine have not been preserved or even fully understood as cohesive systems of medicine because we just don't have the continuation of practice or the records in order to assemble that information for ourselves. So we might look at ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia a bit more like we are looking at the early tribal forms of traditional medicine, and the tribal forms of medicine are going to follow in the lectures after the lecture this session. But it's important to keep in mind that there's evidence that the systems of medicine in Egypt and Mesopotamia were significantly more sophisticated than we know in many ways. So for this week, there are no assigned readings, but we always recommend that you read through your lecture slides prior to listening to the lecture because it helps you get the most out of it. And as we dive into the fabric of history, starting in this lecture, remember that the purpose of this subject is not to have you memorize a load of historical facts and details, but for you to weave a picture in your mind to get a sense of the history of medicine and healing and how it's evolved over time, and picking up on some of the common themes that have happened across numerous cultures. So just remember as we dive into this, don't get too overwhelmed by the details here. Just let the story of medicine be that. It's a story. Let it wash over you as you would hearing a story, and really allow it to suffuse you with an understanding of just where we humans have come from on our journey to understanding health and healing. So we'll see you in part 1 of the lecture. Thank you for joining.